I sold my soul, and now healing myself is the fastest way to die. The broker's handshake was dry and cold, like old paper. The last thing I saw was his grin splitting his face, and then nothing, until I woke up choking on air that tasted like rust and old blood. I was on my hands and knees in a hallway that had no end. It just stretched into a dim red-orange haze in both directions. The light didn't come from a source. It bled from the stone walls themselves, pulsing faintly like a dying heart. The air was so thick it felt like breathing hot soup, and a smell hung in it, a mix of rotten meat and ozone that coated the back of my throat. A wave of nausea hit me, and my body gave out. I collapsed onto the dusty floor, the grit scraping my cheek. Tiny things began to crawl over my skin, the tickle of a dozen unseen legs on my arms, my neck. This is it, I thought. This is what I get. The broker played me, and now I die here. The darkness at the edge of my vision started to close in. Just as I was about to let go, a fire ignited in my gut. Not warmth, but a searing chemical heat that shot through my veins. The broker's gift. It burned away the weakness, the nausea. The crawling things on my skin were just bugs. The foul air was just air. For a second, I felt like a god. But I could feel the fuel for that fire was me. It was consuming something essential, burning through my reserves at a terrifying rate. I had to move. I got to my feet, expecting to see him there, that smiling bastard, watching his new acquisition. But the hallway was empty, utterly silent. Except, down the corridor, a faint glint of something that wasn't stone. It wasn't a pile. There was only one thing in the corridor that wasn't just dust and rock. A body, or what was left of one, slumped against the wall. It was ancient, little more than a leathered husk stretched over a skeleton. A short, thick-bladed sword was plunged into its chest, right through the bone. I knelt. The hilt was wrapped in rotted leather that crumbled to dust under my fingers, revealing pitted, rusted iron. It was wedged in deep. I had to put my foot on the corpse's shoulder and pull, hard. There was a wet, cracking sound as it came free, bringing splinters of rib bone with it. The blade was a wreck. The edge was a series of nicks and chips, and the whole thing was coated in a deep, ugly rust. This was my salvation? This piece of junk? A bitter laugh escaped my lips, echoing in the dead silence. Seriously? A thought, desperate and insane, took hold. I focused on that fire in my gut, willing it into my hand, into the hilt. My palm felt like it was frying. Black, vein-like patterns crawled from my skin onto the metal, spreading over the rust like a hungry mold. The corrosion flaked away, not just disappearing, but being eaten. The chipped edge drew itself into a razor line, the steel underneath glowing with that same hellish orange light as the walls. When it was done, the sword was perfect. It felt balanced, alive in my hand. But my arm was numb, and the fire inside me had dwindled to an ember. The air felt heavy again. My own body felt fragile. I had traded a piece of my borrowed life for a chance to keep it. That's when I heard it. Not a skittering. It was the wet click of bone on stone. Slow. Deliberate. It emerged from the gloom, a nightmare of spindly, jointed legs holding up a bloated, pulsating sack of flesh. It wasn't covered in fur, but in slick, bruised-looking skin. And all across its back were dozens of unblinking human eyes. They all swiveled to look at me at once. My blood ran cold. The thing took a step, then another, its bone-like legs clicking with each movement. I scrambled back, my eyes darting around for any advantage. The ceiling above it was fractured, heavy with loose rock. An idea, stupid and desperate, bloomed in my mind. I feinted left, and it followed, the eyes on its back tracking me with perfect, horrifying unity. It lunged, faster than anything that size should move. I didn't try to hit its body. I threw all my weight into a swing, slamming my new, perfect sword into the wall near the ceiling. A cracked spider webbed out. A shower of dust, then a slab of rock the size of a car door broke free. It crashed down onto the creature's back with a sickening crunch. It shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, and was pinned, but not dead. It thrashed wildly, and one of its forelegs, sharp as a spear, whipped out and impaled my thigh. It wasn't venom that burned. It was cold. A deep, spreading cold that made my muscle feel like jelly, my nerves screaming with a pain that wasn't fire but ice. I screamed, a raw, ragged sound. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, I tore my leg free. The sound of my own flesh ripping was louder than my scream. I didn't look back. I just ran. Each step was a symphony of agony, my leg buckling, my vision swimming in red. I spotted a fissure in the wall, a crack barely wide enough for a person. I threw myself into it, scraping my shoulders and back on the raw stone, and collapsed into the narrow space. The creature shrieked and scraped against the opening, but it couldn't reach me. I was safe. For a moment. Then the pain, that deep, impossible cold, consumed me, and the world went black. When I came to, the only sound was the faint hiss of my own breath. The corridor was silent. I looked at my thigh, expecting a ragged hole. The skin was smooth, pale, and cold to the touch, like a slab of meat from a freezer, healed. But the fire inside me was gone. I was running on fumes. The broker's power had patched the hole, but it had taken almost everything I had left. I pulled myself out of the crack, sword in hand. The dungeon had changed. The endless straight line was gone, replaced by a twisting labyrinth of tunnels and doorways leading into dark, square rooms. The chittering horror was gone, as was the rockfall that had trapped it. I needed something small, something weak, something I could kill without it costing me another pound of flesh. I moved through the maze, my senses on high alert. Finally, I saw it. Ahead, in a chamber slick with some kind of black ooze, a creature was hunched over a pile of something. It was small, twitching, its skinless body writhing like a skinned dog. Easy prey. I raised my sword, stepping carefully over what I thought were scattered rocks in the muck. I was halfway across the room when I realized they weren't rocks. They were bones. An arm made of bone and dried sinew shot out from the pile and grabbed my ankle. I fell hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me. As I gasped for air, two more figures assembled themselves from the debris around me. Skeletons, their forms caked in filth, armed with jagged shards of black obsidian. The little creature I'd been stalking looked up at me, its job done, and scuttled into a crack in the wall. It was bait. I was the fool who took it. Before I could even get up, a shard of obsidian punched through my ribs. The pain was sharp, clean. Another one slid into my stomach, and the world started to gray out. I was on my back, drowning in my own blood, the empty sockets of the bone collectors staring down at me. Then I heard it. That same shriek of tearing metal from the first corridor, only this time it was filled with 1,000 times more rage. The chittering horror scuttled into the chamber. Its back was a mangled ruin. Several of its eyes were smashed, milky white orbs, but it was very much alive. And it was furious. The skeletons turned, their mindless attention fixing on the new, larger threat. The one standing over me raised its weapon for a final blow. It never landed. The last thing I saw before the blackness took me for good was the horror's spear-like leg smashing the skeleton to dust, and the last thing I heard was the snap of bone and that awful wet clicking sound getting closer.